Deconstructing the brainwashing you received when you were in a cult can be a long and difficult process. Of course, that's what we want, right? Cult survivors to be able to deconstruct the harmful beliefs that were keeping them trapped for so long. But when it comes to Ruby, Franke, and Jodi Hildebrandt, it's kind of difficult to believe that Ruby's been able to deconstruct these beliefs so quickly, especially considering that there was evidence that she was mistreating her children for years. So today we are going to unpack the statements that both Ruby and Jodi made at sentencing. And we're going to compare that to the heartbreaking things that Lori Vallow had to say about her children at her sentencing. There's going to be a lot to cover here, and some of it might make us feel a little uncomfortable. So please take a deep breath and let the fresh air in. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you are new. My name is Erin and I am fascinated by all things cult, true crime, and unique spiritual practices. The goal of this channel is to just try to understand what is going on in these groups, in these people's minds, and speak up for survivors and victims who may feel like they don't have a voice. The more awareness we create around certain behaviors and types of people and groups, the more people we can protect from getting involved with those entities. This is something I've been wanting to talk about a long time, ever since I watched Lori Vallow's sentencing hearing and heard what she had to say, and it became very, very clear that she is just completely delusional and has no idea that she's really caused harm to her children. But on the flip side, we see Ruby Franke in her sentencing hearing seeming to understand that she had done wrong and starting to take accountability for her actions. But I guess it's just difficult to believe that when we know that she has a history of harming her own children. And she wasn't guilty when she was posting it on her social media to make money. Something else we can't ignore about these three women is they each had a deep connection to Mormonism. And the way they treated their children was connected to their belief system, meaning that they thought that if they could cast the evil out of their children, whether it was by starving them, dousing them in water, making them live outside for days, murdering them, they really believed that this treatment of their children would make them repent and make them worthy of God's love in some weird and twisted way. And when we really start to think about the fact that Jodi had a very good reputation within the Mormon community of helping people and helping families and helping parents raise their children, it just becomes more and more insidious, and you really start to see how dangerous this behavior becomes. So the big question we have with these deeply ingrained belief systems that all three of these women had, coupled with how distorted those beliefs became and destructive and scary and abusive, one can't help but wonder, is there a link within certain sects of Mormonism? What causes someone within this religion find the wrong people who tell them the wrong things about their very own children? And as we watch these statements, I'm really asking the question, do I believe these women? Do I believe that Jodi and Ruby are regretful for what they did? Or do I believe that they're just trying to save face and they're playing the legal game so that they can get off a little sooner? That's what we're going to unpack today. So I'm going to start off right now with Jodi Hildebrandt's statement at her hearing.
I sincerely love these children. I desire for them to heal physically and emotionally. One of the reasons I did not go to trial is that I did not want them to emotionally relive the experience which would have been detrimental to them. My hope and prayer is that they will heal and move forward to have beautiful lives. I am willing to.
I hate that she's acting as if now she's concerned about the well-being of these children. Like, we should be thanking her for not going through a trial and having the children have to relive what happened to them. What happened to them would not have happened to them if they had never met you. But then again, we know Ruby's past, and I don't know if that's an accurate statement to make. Honestly, who knows? They were already in a dangerous family dynamic. I do believe that Jodi exacerbated that dynamic and made it a lot worse. But it's very, very frustrating that now it's one thing if she said, I acknowledge the pain and suffering I put on these children and I regret it and I wish I could go back and change it. But instead she's like, aren't I such a good woman because I love these kids, and since I love them, I didn't want them to endure the emotional turmoil of going through a trial. Come on. You're the reason that they had to do this. You set up a safe in your home, which we didn't talk about in my last video because I didn't see that footage until like an hour after I filmed that video. But she literally set up a safe room with a full-on kitchen, bed, no windows, and it locked from the outside. And people who analyzed it said if it was a true safe room, it would have locked from the inside. Like if you were really concerned about a natural disaster or a, government issue, or heaven forbid, a war broke out and you have a safe room in your home, it would lock from the inside, not the outside. So allegedly, we have speculated that she was using that as a room to put the children in for a long period of time, like solitary confinement. You were preparing to make things worse. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, I want to protect the kids. And I get she has to say this because she's wanting a smaller sentence, a shorter sentence, but it's still a little tone deaf if you ask me. But perhaps I'm looking at this from a super biased point of view because I'm so angry at her and Ruby at this point, because we've seen so much evidence of just torture that they've put these children through. So it's difficult to empathize with people I think are monsters,
Submit to what the state feels would be an appropriate amount of time served to make.
Answer to your question, Your Honor. I knew that whatever she might say to the author of the pre-sentence report would probably sound hollow and self-serving, and perhaps it does today. But I know that my client, in the statement that she makes to the court today, that statement is absolutely sincere.
Does Ms. Hildebrandt recognize that it's her behavior that caused the harm to the children that she's referred to in her statement?
Your Honor, she recognizes that she was, along with Ms. Franke, that she made decisions with respect to the discipline of those children that were wrong, that caused harm to those children. She fully recognizes that and accepts responsibility for that.
All right. Anything else?
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Hildebrandt, this circumstance is tragic. It's largely, of course, of your making. By any measure, your conduct in this case was disastrous for these children. Adults are supposed to protect children. Adults with specialized training in particular are supposed to protect children. You didn't do that in this case. In this case, you terrorized children, and the results have been tragic. It's what happened to these children and your philosophy in dealing with them, frankly, seems detached from reality or any objective standard of decency or even common sense. And the court finds that it is appropriate that you serve a prison sentence. The court finds under the statute, Utah Code 76-3-401, that given the gravity and circumstances of the offenses, the number of victims, and the history and character and needs of the defendant, that consecutive sentences are appropriate. The court imposes 4 1 to 15-year sentences to be, again, served consecutively for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. The last thing I do need to tell you is that you only have 30 days to file or perfect an appeal of any error of the court by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the court. If you don't do that, you will lose your right to appeal. That has to be filed in writing, and again within 30 days. You also have the right to the assistance of an attorney and to have an attorney appointed if you cannot afford to hire your own.
We talked a little bit about this in the Nature Boy case, which is another cult leader that was recently sentenced to life without parole. You can watch more about that right here. But it's so important to have all of this documented on record and to have the judge react in that way and to have a sentence like this be issued, a long sentence be issued, because it does set the precedent for future cases like this. We've covered on this channel in recent weeks multiple too many situations of children being abused. I've covered troubled teen institutions and the extensive abuse that the children in these places are experiencing. And something like this, what we're seeing with Ruby Franke, can set the precedent for future cases when it comes to child abuse. And I think that that is also something to consider, why this is such a good thing that this has happened, that they are being served this much time in prison, because the extreme of this and what I'm concerned could have happened to these children is what happened to JJ and Tylee with Lori Vallow, and I mentioned that in my previous video. Furthermore, it brings up the issue of children being exploited on the internet. There are no real laws in place on a federal level that protect children from the internet. Parents can exploit their kids, put them online, share intimate information about their personal lives, and be making a ton of income from it. And the child might grow up and never see a dime of that. And I believe Illinois last year was the first state to pass a law that restricts what parents can keep for themselves. So it's like if a child is in their content, that child has to get, I think, around like 15% of the content to be put in a trust for them to access by the time they're 18. So that's very positive. That's great. But that was a major criticism that Ruby Franke had for years, and that was the 8 passengers situation. People were concerned about how intimate the details of these kids' lives were that Ruby was openly sharing online, you know, their struggles, their tantrums, their happy days, them going through puberty, you know, things that like it feels like that photo album that your parents have of you. Maybe I'm aging myself, but like your parents have a photo album of you growing up, and it's like the first time you use the bathroom, and then your new partner comes over and your mom's like, "Oh, let me show you pics of her as a baby." And you're like, "Please don't. I don't want anyone seeing my first poop in a toilet." Like, that's not necessary. It's embarrassing. But now we're at the level where we're sharing stuff like that with millions of people and making money doing it. And that in and of itself could be considered if the child can't consent to doing it. And there's also other family channels where it's like the child is working. The child is working several hours every day in this content. And can you really have your child consent? And where is all the money going? Is the child getting a trust fund? Are they getting college money? So I want to jump into Ruby's sentencing, because I do think that the judge took into consideration the history. She wasn't innocent. She was treating her children poorly before this, and then it just escalated and got much, much, much worse once she met Jodi. And so that's why I think I have a little bit of a problem with her sentencing speech. But I'm also curious, like, we've seen this many times with people who have been brought up in the Mormon religion, where children are parented very, not just strictly, but with that like corporal punishment. Like, they're seen as like dirty unless they repent and suffer. And I don't want to make a blanket statement about Mormons, because I don't know enough about the religion yet. I do want to learn more and talk about it more. And maybe I'm more thinking of like the FLDS because I know more about that. I've done more research on the fundamentalist side of it. But you just can't help but notice these similarities. So if you have any insight, I would love to hear your point of view. If you have a story about your life growing up as a Mormon or in the Mormon religion, or if you saw similar themes like this, I would love to hear it. But let's go ahead and jump into Ruby Franke's sentencing.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. In my few comments this morning, and in the comments my client wishes to make in a few minutes, we are not suggesting, nor are we asking that the court deviate from the stipulated sentence contained in the written plea agreement. I want the court to know that through introspection and reflection, Ruby Franke has become a serious student of her own actions. In the very early days of my involvement with Ruby, she was somewhat defensive, and she was still very much indoctrinated into a philosophy that was destructive. Fortunately, Ruby came to the stark realization of the errors in her thinking patterns and subsequent actions. To say that she was horrified by this realization would be to put it mildly. I have marveled at how quickly Ruby abandoned her defensive stance and moved toward her total acceptance of her actions and to her sentence today. So far, she has used her time in jail to unwrap the layers upon layers of deceit and deception foisted upon her over the last 4 years by an unscrupulous individual. Ruby realizes that she still has work to do in shedding those thinking errors and to reestablish a better and correct pattern of thinking and behavior. Ruby realizes that changing her thinking, reestablishing relationships, and healing are not simple or easy tasks. However, she is committed to doing that work. I would like the court to know that Ruby Franke is a delightful, respectful, and responsible person. She is open to feedback and addressing the consequences of her actions head on, and now ready to address your honor and accept your judgment. Thank you, Judge Walton.
Thank you. Ms. Franke has a statement she'd like to make.
She does.
Judge Walton.
You don't have to bend down.
Okay, thank you. I would like to make a statement without any intent to change my stipulated sentence. For the past 4 years, I've chosen to follow counsel and guidance that has led me into a dark delusion.
I'm really good. She's acknowledging that, and she's also acknowledging how long she's been involved with Jodi. So yes, it's been 4 years. The kids were living with her from last May until August. And there was a year that her husband was like estranged from the family at Jodi's request / demand, I suppose. I think that this is, and it's kind of coming to me now, so sorry if this is a little convoluted or this is a little off the cuff, but if you already have a foundation from your spiritual practice that treats children like they need to be severely disciplined, which seems to be how Ruby parented. She had these extreme, strange views on how you discipline a child. So if her child forgot to bring a lunch to school, Ruby would refuse to bring the lunch to school because, well, that's the natural outcome of your actions and you need to learn those. And so it just feels very extreme to do that to a 5 or 6-year-old, or taking your child's bed away because they pull a prank on their sibling and making them sleep on the beanbag for 9 months. Like, these seem they're just extreme ways of disciplining a child and parenting a child. And if you already have that foundation laid and you are starting to see the cracks of your marriage and you go to your elders at the church for guidance and they recommend a therapist because Jodi was recommended by the higher ups at the Mormon church, you're going to trust that. And you're also going to be more ripe for the indoctrination. I am in no way saying that it is justified or valid, but when we talk about cults and indoctrination and we start seeing how a victim becomes a perpetrator, that is the similar path that they go on. They are slowly, specifically indoctrinated. It starts off with maybe you start seeing tiny little red flags in whatever the leader or the guide is telling you, but it's all framed around like, well, your growth, the health of your relationship, the health of your family. This is going to feel uncomfortable, but that means you're growing. And so when someone is in that mindset of, oh, I have to constantly grow and everything that this person tells me is what I have to follow if I want to grow, if I want to reach these goals, if I want to have a healthy mental space, if I want to become enlightened, if we're getting to like the extremes of certain cultic groups. It is not just, oh, you're going to get brainwashed and hypnotized one day. It is years sometimes of intentional, tiny little moments between you and that cult leader or that coach or that guide or that, guru. And you slowly start losing all of your boundaries. You slowly start shutting off all of your instincts. And that's what brainwashing is like. That's what indoctrination is like. And I prefer the word indoctrination to brainwashing because brainwashing is just so taboo. And some cults use the term brainwashing as like a positive thing. But I do find it valuable and important that Ruby is bringing up that she was under Jodi's guidance for 4 years. And this happened last year where the children were ferociously abused. So you could argue, as someone that explores cults every day and has learned a lot, you could say that, like, yes, there was a slow, methodic, insidious, several steps and moments that led to this terrible, terrible thing to happen. And maybe Jodi was directing Ruby, but then maybe because Ruby became comfortable with certain things, she started doing certain things to her children. She's not innocent here, but maybe she is starting to really understand what she's done. My biggest criticism of this so far is she was caught in August, very defensive in August. By December, we started hearing in her phone calls that, like, Jodi is the one doing all this. I was under her spell, da 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 da. That's only 4 or 5 months. Perhaps she is doing the work. It seems like she is doing the work, but I don't believe she's truly deconstructed her beliefs because that can take years. That can take years to fully understand what happened to you. I've interviewed some cult survivors on my channel. I'm going to link one right up here, and she'll share with you, how she started having to deconstruct. And even now, some things, like there's like reminders, and she has to be very intentional with what's going on in here. And so I just want to say that to recognize that, yes, there was a cult dynamic at play here, but no, I don't believe that Ruby is completely healed because she already had questionable tactics before she met Jodi. But I do hope, and I do feel like there is a sincerity there. I still have my question marks because she's used to being in front of the camera. She's used to playing in the part. I think she's very manipulative and she knows how to get what she wants and she knows how to look like, innocent. So I don't trust her 100%, but I do trust that she will do the work to change and understand what she did. Because and I want to preface that now with, we're going to watch Lori Vallow's sentencing, and it is a stark difference from this to that. So that is why I believe that Ruby has at least started doing the work to deconstruct.
The recorded version of reality went largely unchecked, as I would isolate from anyone who challenged me. I was led to believe that this world was an
Isolating from anyone who challenges you, that is how you stay in an echo chamber. That's how you shut off your critical thinking. And that's probably what Jodi wanted her to do.
evil place filled with cops who control, hospitals that injure, government agencies that brainwash, church leaders who lie and lust, husbands who refuse to protect, and children who need abuse. My choice to believe and behave this paranoia culminated into criminal activity for which I stand before you today ready to take accountability. Jodi Hildebrandt was never my business partner, nor was I ever employed by her. I have never received wages from her or connections. Jodi was employed as my son's counselor in 2019, and in 2020 I paid her to be my mentor. It is important to me to demonstrate my remorse and regret without blame.
Imagine paying for a mentorship and that mentor tells you that you have to hurt your children. And someone in my previous video commented and pointed out something that I want to bring up here, that perhaps Ruby was targeted by Jodi because Ruby had amassed 2 million followers on YouTube at this time. So it would make Jodi more credible and get her more money, get her more clients if she were to lock in Ruby. So perhaps Ruby was targeted by Jodi. It's definitely a possibility.
I take full accountability for my choices, and it is my preference that I serve a prison sentence. Thank you to the officers in Santa Clara and the Ivan City Police, Nick Hallman, Brian Palufo, Cy Pikuvit, Mike Pondoyo in Tobler, John Ward, D. Lewis, and Chief Flowers. You were the angels who came and saved my children. I especially want to thank Detective Jay Bate. She plucked me out of a situation I didn't know how to get out of. And the moment she handcuffed me was the moment I gained my freedom. You were not the controlling ones. I was. Thank you to the medical staff at Intermountain Hospital. Your skill, tenderness, and professionalism helped to heal my children. Jodi and I inflicted the injuries, not the hospital. Thank you to DCFS, the Children's Justice Center, Judge Basil, and other key adults. You've gathered my children under your wing and offered them love, compassion, encouragement. You were not the ones who were doing the brainwashing. Thank you to my Bishop Tom Hawks and my state president, Jim Nilsson, for reminding me of the Lord's love for the lost. So much pain and suffering would have been avoided had I followed and heeded your counsel. I was the one who was deceived, not you. Thank you to the Washington County Prosecutor's Office, Ryan Sham, the legal assistants and discovery clerks. Eric Clark, you exemplified to me how justice and mercy are meant to coexist. My charges are just. They offer safety to my family, accountability to the public, and they did show mercy to me. Thank you to my attorney, Lamar Winward, and his staff. I would not be where I am today without them. Thank you to Randy Kester for your limitless energy in healing my family. My dear friends, Pam and Roy, I'm so sorry for letting you down. Because of your association with me, your innocence was called into question. My mother-in-law, father-in-law, Kevin's family, my cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and neighbors, you all saw the warning signs long before I did, and you did what you could. You wanted to help, but I pushed you away. My mother and father, I have been utterly wretched to you. You have offered me unconditional love, and for that I have offered you unconditional contempt. My siblings and their spouses, because of my decision to roll around in a pigsty, I have dragged your families through the mud in public. Yet, when I desired to return as the prodigal sister, unlike the prodigal's brother in the Bible, you synced step with my parents and ran out to greet me. Your capacity to love is unprecedented. Kevin, my husband of more than 23 years, you are the love of my life. I'm so sorry to leave to you to finish what we both started together. The ending of our marriage is a tragedy. And you are wrapped around my heart in a knot I'll never be able to undo. To my babies, my 6 little chicks, you were part of me. I was the mama duck who was consistently watering you to safety. I can see now that over the past 4 years, I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger. I would never led you to darkness knowingly. I was so disoriented that I believed dark was light and light was wrong. I would do anything in this world for you. My willingness to sacrifice all for you was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly. I took from you all that was soft and safe and good. I took from you your mother. How terrifying this must have been for you. I'll never stop crying for hurting your tender souls. You are each so precious to me. I'm sorry. My choice.
Well, there I do feel like she's being sincere. I do. Maybe she was truly indoctrinated by Jodi and encouraged to do things she wouldn't otherwise do. I still feel trepidatious even saying that, but I feel like I'm hearing sincerity in her voice. I'm an actor, so I always feel like I can pick up on when people are pretending and faking. And I don't feel like these tears, this emotion is fake. I'm glad that she is apologizing to them. And there's still this, I guess, 30% of me is questioning if it's for show, and 70% of me, I think, is believing that she's sincere. And she does deserve to go to jail regardless of the guilt that she feels. She deserves it, just like Allison Mack deserved to go to prison for helping Keith Raniere do what he did to women. This is why being careful who your prophets are, who you follow, it's dangerous. And discernment is really, really important. It's important to question. If you are, no matter what spiritual practice you follow, you should be questioning your leaders. And if they get angry that you're questioning them, then you need to leave that organization immediately. Because that is a red flag. Someone who is honest and devoted to their spiritual practice will have the conversation with you and try to understand where your questions come from. But please, if you question, and always question things, I always say when I sign off on my channel, like, ask questions, stay skeptical, because this is how easy it is to get sucked into something and do something that you might never have done otherwise.
To live in fear of the world has created a great vulnerability and a blind spot for me, where I have broken hearts and I've caused people to suffer and I have betrayed sacred trust. Watching my community respond to my charges with justice and mercy and grace and love is all the more evidence to me how wrong I've been. This world is full of really good people. And finally, I'm sorry for twisting God's word and distorting his doctrines. My greatest desire is to stand in his court someday spotless and confident. And Judge Walton.
It's great that she acknowledges that. I'm sorry for twisting God's word and twisting his doctrines.
I know that standing before you today is a necessary step towards that end. Thank you to you and your staff for facilitating my opportunity to take accountability and to answer for my charges. I am humbled and willing to serve a prison sentence as long as it takes to continue unraveling all of the misinformation I have believed and bought.
You know, she probably believes that this will be her repentance so she can still go to heaven. Like, I could see that being like a big, big concern for her. Like, maybe if she goes through this and she serves her full sentence, she will end up at the shiny gates of heaven.
Swallowed and acted out. And for my family to heal and for the community to heal. And I understand this is going to take time. I'm committed to continuing my learning until all of my toxic layers are shed, and I am ready to re-enter as a contributing member of our beautiful society. Thank you, Judge Walton.
Thank you for your statement, Ms. Franke. Anything else, Mr. Winward?
No, Your Honor.
Anything else prior to the court imposing sentence?
No, Your Honor.
The sentence will be that Ms. Franke serve 4 counts, 4 1 to 15-year sentences based on her convictions for 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. Again, they will be served consecutively pursuant to the parties' agreement and the applicable statute. Under the applicable statute, the court finds that that consecutive sentences are appropriate. Ms. Franke, the last thing I do need to tell you is that you have only 30 days to file or to perfect an appeal of any errors of the court by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the court. If you don't do that within 30 days, you will lose your right to appeal. You also have the right to the assistance of an attorney on appeal and to have one appointed if you cannot afford to hire your own. Restitution, as agreed by the parties, will remain open for a period of 8 months. Any of the parties can bring that matter back before the court within that period of time. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So before we jump into Lori Vallow's, I'm sharing this for several reasons. I almost made this its own video because I wanted to express the seriousness of what being so indoctrinated looks like and how not understanding that, like, not being in reality, being completely delusional and believing that your delusion is reality, how dangerous that can be. And we see this in Lori Vallow's statement during her sentencing. And it is, just to warn you, extremely disturbing and upsetting. And it is a stark difference to what we just watched, where we saw someone take accountability and acknowledge that they were led astray and did bad things. And now we're going to watch the very disturbing sentencing statements made by Lori Vallow.
I would like to start by quoting John from the New Testament in the Bible. In John chapter 8, verse 7, Jesus says, "He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." Then in verse 15, Jesus says, "Ye judge after the flesh, I judge no man. And yet if I judge, my judgment is true." Jesus knows me, and Jesus understands me. I mourn with all of you who mourn.
You just love when they're like, well, Jesus still loves me. Does he? You murdered your children.
My children and Tammy. Jesus Christ knows the truth of what happened here. Jesus Christ knows that no one was murdered in this case. Accidental deaths happen. Suicides happen. Fatal side effects from medications happen. I have a different perspective in life because in 2002, when I was pregnant with Tylee, I died in the hospital while in labor with her. They tried to stop my labor. They put me on the table and they put something in my IV, and I felt my spirit falling to the floor. I was standing near my pregnant body, watching the doctors try to revive me, which took them a few minutes. In that time, my sister Stacy was standing to my left. I turned to hug her and was surprised that her spirit was as tangible as a physical body, because I knew I was in spirit and she was in spirit. She said she needed to show me some things, and we went to heaven. I later returned to my body. Because of this experience, I have access to heaven and the spirit world. Since then,
just goes to show that she is still in her delusion. She's going to say, I mean, her even saying that no one was murdered when they found the pieces of the children in her husband's backyard. It's insulting to the children and anyone who loved them. And we haven't heard her say anything about them. It's all about her and how she's spiritually better than everyone else. And because of this, she knows more than everyone else. And because of that, she can treat her children however she wants because now they're in heaven.
I have had many communications from people now living in heaven, including my children, Tylee Ashlyn and Joshua Jackson, my sisters, Stacy and Lolly, my aunts and my uncles, and my grandparents. I have had many communications with Jesus Christ, the Savior of this world, and our heavenly parents. I have had many angelic visitors have come and communicated with me. And
it's angering, it's frustrating, and it is deeply, deeply depressing. It's so sad. It's so sad that she can't, she's so indoctrinated. Her mind is so warped that she can't recognize that she's not talking to people in heaven. And whether or not you believe in praying or speaking to people who have passed on or hearing messages from them, I think we can all acknowledge that it's a delusion. It's not real. And it's sad and disgusting that she's bringing this up in a court of law as if she does not deserve to spend the rest of her life in prison.
Even manifested themselves to me. Because of these communications, I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world. Because of my communications with my friend Tammy Daybell, I know that she is also very happy and extremely busy. I have always mourned the loss of my loved ones, and I have lost many in this mortal world. However, I know them more than most people. I know where they are now and what they're doing. I know how wonderful heaven is, and I'm home.
Spoken like every cult leader. I know more than you. I know more than all of you. And you're all idiots because I know more than you.
Sick for it every single day. I know we all lived in heaven before we were born on earth, and we were all adult spirits in the heavenly realm. We chose to come to earth as mortals. Heaven is more wonderful than you can possibly imagine. I do not fear death, but I look forward to it. I did not want to return to my body when I was out of it. Even though my son Colby, who I adored more than anything, was only 6 years old at the time, and I was about to give birth to this new baby girl that I wanted so badly. I was a young mother, and you would think I wouldn't want to leave my children, but as I stood in heaven, I did not.
That doesn't help your case that you're like, I would love to not be around my children. Love you guys, but I'm going to stay up here. Like, that just shows that she has little regard or care for her children.
Want to go back. I thought they would be fine without me because I was peaceful and I was happy and I was home. But then I was told by Jesus that I needed to go back and complete things that I had covenanted or promised to do before I was born. This caused me a lot of distress because I knew heaven was my real home, and I only wanted to be there. I was free from pain, emotional and physical. But then I was shown how I would help my children and others in the future. So ultimately, I did agree to go back to my body. Kylie has visited me. She is happy and very busy. Kylie is free now from all the pains of her life. Kylie suffered horrible physical pain her whole life. I sat with Kylie in the hospital year after year after year while she screamed in pain when the morphine wasn't even enough to take away the pain of her pancreatitis. I sat there while she cried and I held back her hair while she threw up.
What I keep not understanding about this is, why does it matter if they're busy up in heaven? I don't want to be busy in heaven, okay? I'm plenty busy now. I want a break in heaven. What is the point of saying that? What do you think you're going to gain from telling a judge that? They're busy. They're not here anymore. They're dead.
And I am the only person on this earth who knows how much Kylie suffered in her life. She had pain every single day. She never felt good. Her body did not work right. And I don't know if that was from complications from me dying while she was being born or something else, but she had a very difficult life. She was sexually abused by her own biological father since she was 3.
That feels fake to me. That fake crying that she's doing. As if Kylie would have preferred to be dead because her body was in pain.
Years old, and she was forced by family court to go visit him for 10 years against her will. I fought for her in court. I protected her. I tried to protect her with my whole life. I tried to protect her. I worried about her every single day. Kylie had to get her GED because she couldn't go to school every day because she never felt good. She felt sick. Nobody knows this because Kylie, like myself, tries to put on a good front, tries to be a happy person. tries to have hope in life, tries to know that she's here for a purpose and that she has an eternal purpose to be on this earth. But I never stopped worrying about her. One of the times that Tylee came to me as a spirit after she died, she commanded me, and she said to me, "Stop worrying, Mom. We are fine." She knows how I worry and how I miss her. The first time JJ visited me after he passed away, he put his arm around me and he said to me, "You didn't do anything wrong, Mom. I love you. And I know you loved me every minute of my life." JJ, Joshua Jackson, was an adult spirit. And he was very, very tall when he put his arm around me. He is busy. He is engaged. He has jobs that he does there. And he is happy where he is. His life was short, but JJ's life was meaningful. JJ was a wonderful person and touched the lives of everyone. And I adored him every minute of his life.
I just can't imagine her, like, lawyers and everyone in the courtroom and the judge just being like, when is she going to stop talking? This is just, it's so disrespectful. It's heartbreaking that she's able to say all of this and act like her children are fine and she didn't do anything wrong. It's vile. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen a perpetrator do or say. Your own children. That makes you a monster. And this is why I wanted to show this next to Jodi and Ruby, because at least they both seemed to, like, have some kind of understanding. Again, doesn't excuse what they did. Doesn't make me like them anymore. I definitely think they deserved the sentences that they got, and I definitely believe that they're monsters too. But this is gut-wrenching. I can't decide if I'm angry or heartbroken over hearing it, you know? It shows, it's the perfect example of how deeply ingrained these beliefs are in her, how cult-like they are. Not even her facing going to jail for the rest of her life and being a convicted murderer of her 2 children is helping her to see that what she believes is flawed. It's tragic. And this is why we have to take cults and cult dynamics way more seriously, because this is just the extreme of what can happen. If there is a group that you're a part of, just make sure you stay skeptical about it. Because Lori Vallow, was always seeking. She was always trying to be the most enlightened, the most spiritual, the most connected to God. And I'm going to talk more about this in my video on Friday. I'm going to break down Chad Daybell, who his influence was, how she's allegedly a cult leader, and how that ties into Lori, and try to understand all of that, because his trial starts today. It's probably going on while you're watching this video. So I want to be able to provide everybody updates and a total breakdown of the cult and cult ideology that they were all starting to practice, because this is like what she and Chad were into, was like a doomsday idea of this life and how evil could intercept and take over a human body. She called her kids zombies. She believed that killing them released the zombie from them, and now they're the real version of themselves. That's why she believes that they're happier now. That's how deep this is. And it's going to take a long time and a lot of therapy for her to recognize what she did. And the day she does is going to be a devastating day for her. And it's shocking. This has been going on for years. She was caught a long time ago and she still doesn't get it. It's like, it's hard to believe. It's like not even real.
My eternal friend, Tammy Daybell, has visited me on several occasions. She came to bring me peace and comfort, and I know that she is extremely busy helping her family, especially her children and grandchildren, and I have a great love for Tammy. My beautiful children, Tylee Ashlyn and Joshua Jackson, rest safely this day in the arms of Jesus. My wonderful friend, Tammy Daybell, rests safely this day in the arms of Jesus. And I look forward to the day when we are all reunited and I too will rest with them in the arms of my Jesus.
I know that this is really difficult to talk about, especially if you have children of your own. I can't imagine how heartbreaking it's been to watch all of this come through over the last few years. It's heartbreaking. And I am genuinely grateful that Ruby's son escaped, because I'm very fearful that he would have seen the same fate as JJ and Tylee. And Ruby and Jodi, they might not have been able to recognize the error in their ways. The stark contrast between both of those sentencing statements it's just so palpable. And it's really a reminder to just protect what's most cherished by you. Take care of each other, take care of your children, and remember, please, always ask questions and stay skeptical. I really appreciate you sticking around until the end. I know this was a heavy way to start your week, but I am still very, very grateful that you were here with me, and I really appreciate you and your support. Stick around because we have a very interesting video coming up on Friday all about Chad Daybell, and stay tuned too because his trial, he's literally the person that helped Lori do all of these things. He's on trial today. Will probably be on trial all week, so we will be covering that as well. Thank you all so much again. Please take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Always ask questions and stay skeptical. Until next time. Bye.